Trevor Kavanagh. Welcome, Trevor.
Hi, Kevin. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Before we get on to the subject at hand, which of course is never hear Keir's latest foreign trip, this one worryingly to China, let me ask you what you think about this, because I think we might have reached peak crisis with what I'm no longer going to beat about the bush is the BBC's anti-Semitism problem. It was extraordinary yesterday. 3 bulletins, 3 programmes talked about the horror of the extermination, not of 6 million Jews, but of 6 million people. They went out of their way to eliminate the Jewish aspect to the Holocaust, which I always thought was kind of central to the equation. Watch this.
27th of January, Holocaust Memorial Day, a day for remembering the 6 million people who were murdered by the Nazi regime over 80 years ago.
Now, today marks Holocaust Memorial Day, a day for remembering the 6 million people who were murdered by the Nazi regime over 80 years ago.
Today marks Holocaust Memorial Day, a day for remembering the 6 million people who were murdered by the Nazi regime over 80 years ago.
Now, Trevor, the BBC has apologised for this and say, oh, the wording was incorrect, and then they've issued a statement full of all the marvellous reporting of Holocaust Memorial Day that they actually did do yesterday. OK, fair enough. But that's extraordinary. It is extraordinary that 3 different programmes failed to mention that the people exterminated by the Nazis in the Second World War, in those horrific concentration camps, in the gas chambers, were Jewish. I think we have a real crisis now. This is it. We've reached the point where something has to be done, because our national broadcaster, our state broadcaster that we're forced to pay for by law, 180 quid a year, without a shadow of a doubt, in my view, has an anti-Semitism problem, doesn't it?
Well, I don't think anyone could possibly dispute, Kevin, that this was a calculated and deliberate, as it turns out, an insult to the Jewish people, and indeed to the common decency of those who look upon the Jewish people as a victim of genocide. This is the whole point. The very word genocide was introduced specifically to describe what happened during the Holocaust. It wasn't a general term until the United Nations and the other bodies involved in the investigations into the concentration camps worked out what word would be appropriate, and the only word they came up with specifically related to the deaths of 6 million Jewish people was genocide. It doesn't apply to anyone else. It means wiping out a whole race, exterminating the Jewish people. So, you know, nobody at the BBC writing the script for those 4 broadcasts, I think there were 4, could possibly have not known that that was the case, even in general terms, if not specifically. That the Holocaust was the slaughter of 6 million Jews.
Exactly right. and across those 3 programmes, hundreds of people will have come into contact with those bulletins, with the script, with the production. You're telling me that nobody said, you don't think maybe we should mention that the victims of the Holocaust were Jewish? Do you think maybe that might be sort of relevant? There's a problem there. As I say, we have always here, I think a lot of journalists have walked on eggshells. It's a bit like specifically accusing Jeremy Corbyn of anti-Semitism. No, it's not that. I just have a problem with the state of Israel and all that kind of stuff. Well, now I'm not going to walk on eggshells. I say right here and now the BBC has a huge anti-Semitism problem, and they revealed it yesterday, and they better do something about it. It is beyond the pale now. Can we get on now to never hear Keir's latest foreign trip to Beijing to see Xi Jinping? You know, Kemi Badenoch saying he shouldn't be there. This is the first visit by a British Prime Minister for 8 years. Comes hot on the heels of Keir Starmer giving the go-ahead to the mega Chinese embassy in the heart of our financial district in the city in London. He did that after Xi Jinping cut off the water and the electricity to our British embassy in Beijing and said, until you give us planning permission, we're not going to put the power back on. So, all right, then you can have it. So there he is. After that last week, now he's in Beijing. Articulate what we should be worried about here, Trevor.
In a word, everything. I mean, we've had two-tier Keir, never hear Keir, now we've got kowtow Keir.
Kowtow Keir.
And what we're seeing is a man who's basically genuflecting to the communist, extreme communist regime of China. I mean, this is a totalitarian regime before our very eyes. It's not being concealed as, for instance, the Soviet Union was in the days before the internet, social media, and so on. We all know exactly what China is doing, which is to try and take over the economic reins and the diplomatic power and the hegemony of the whole world. So, I mean, as far as Britain is concerned, we've learned, or should have learned, over the Chagos deal, where we're handing over a crucial strategic asset to pro-Chinese Mauritius. We've had the embassy or spy base being considered or approved now, thanks to Sir Keir, who one of the conditions of his trip to Beijing was that he would give the planning permission to this, what is effectively a spy base in the heart of London. We've had phone tapping. We've had the actual Prime Minister and his ministerial advisors and the business people traveling with him to Beijing warned that they must take burner phones and laptops because the Chinese cannot be trusted not to delve into everything on their smartphones. And we've had trials which have been abandoned halfway through of civil servants actually working as spies for China. It goes on and on. You've Huawei, you've got the abandonment of Hong Kong and all the agreements that were made. You've got the pursuit of the rare earth minerals. You've got the electric cars, which are basically spy vehicles on wheels. What more do you need?
Exactly right. Now, what we have to bear in mind, let's make this clear. I mean, Xi Jinping is malevolent towards this country. China is malevolent towards this country. And somehow or other, our Prime Minister seems to believe that by going over there cap in hand, he can gloss over that, become best friends with Xi Jinping, do terrific trade deals. Do you trust our Prime Minister to raise, for example, the issue of the Uyghur Muslims, the 12 million Uyghur Muslims who are the victims of the most appalling human rights abuse. And that is just the beginning in China. We know what kind of a country is it. Do you trust our Prime Minister to raise that issue with the Chinese leader?
Well, I think we've learned from 18 very punishing months that you can't trust this Prime Minister to negotiate a Chinese restaurant menu, let alone a trade deal or any other deal with the hardline communists.
I mean, his presence there is extremely worrying, and this kind of disappearing up the backside of Xi Jinping increasingly is a source of great concern. But let's turn to who's actually gone on this mission to the Far East. What is interesting, and apparently she is in one hell of a rage about this is to negotiate trade deals. Wouldn't the Prime Minister normally have taken his Chancellor of the Exchequer? Certainly Rachel Reeves thinks she should be on this trip. She went once before on her own. She has not been invited on this trip, been told her presence is not required. What do we read into that? Do you think her days may be numbered?
I think that she expected to be on this trip and probably assumed she was right up until the last minute when she was dumped and replaced by one of her Treasury juniors. I suspect that Rachel Reeves is right now somewhere in an attic in the Treasury blubbing and crying her eyes out, as she is wont. I mean, look, this is a terrible snub to the Chancellor. It is inexplicable that she's not there, especially since everyone expected her to be there. And frankly, I think we are seeing the dying days of Keir Starmer, and certainly if he goes, she goes.
Indeed. And what are you hearing? I mean, the Westminster gossip mill is at fever pitch at the moment that Angela Rayner is on major manoeuvres and may be set to make some kind of challenge to her former boss's leadership, Keir Starmer. I mean, Andy Burnham, of course, failed because he wasn't allowed to stand in that by-election, but there are other challenges to Mr Starmer's regime, and one of them is Angela Rayner. What are you hearing?
Well, I think that she's been on manoeuvres ever since she became originally Deputy Prime Minister, and before even that, and I was forecasting way back at the time of the 1984 election, 18 months ago, that we may fall out of love very substantially with Keir Starmer, but we may live to regret his departure. We are looking to a possible leadership contest in which the now likely successor, Andy Burnham, has been ruled out. Wes Streeting, I think, has less than a 50-50 chance of being the successor. And I think that Angie Rayner has the trade union movement behind her. And she would come in and she would bring in a very left-wing, pro-trade union, pro-public sector agenda and premiership, and in which Ed Miliband would play a major role as her Chancellor of the Exchequer, in which case we're all doomed. We might as well get to emigrate to Australia, where I have a passport, so I might do that.
Yeah, well, I'll come with you, Trevor. I just had James Price on, the former Tory government advisor, on, and he said to me, if Angela Rayner's the answer, what the hell is the question? I said, well, the question is this: who in the entire world would you least like to be the Prime Minister of Great Britain? Answer: Angela Rayner. You're quite right, it's hard to believe, but there are even worse people in the Labour Party than Sir Keir Starmer. Trevor, great to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time. That is Trevor Kavanagh, Westminster veteran, former political editor of The Sun, and still one hell of a writer, one hell of a columnist. He knows Westminster inside out. Next up.